Welcome to Rappler Talk. I'm Ezra Faraz. I'm joined here today by Andy Rapista, the co-founder and executive director of Watson Institute Philippines. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, why did you choose to bring Watson Institute from the United States to the Philippines?
So I was going to college and I realized that I felt like I wasn't learning any practical skills that I needed in the workforce. I also felt like tuition was a lot. So I decided to take a gap year and I started working for nonprofits like Ashoka, Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, and International Youth Council, and we were working with the UN. And I realized that I didn't have to wait for a bachelor's degree to go out into the real world and start building my skill set. Another one is I realized as well that, I had a fear that I saw that there were a lot of my friends who had bachelor's degrees and they were struggling to get jobs, and I felt like I needed to put myself out there in the real world as fast as possible. A second reason was I was born in the States, but I grew up in Manila, Philippines, and when I was going to high school I had a lot of friends who had to drop out of school because of tuition costs and start working to help support their families. Even as a child, I realized that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And I felt like this was incredibly unfair. I felt like this was a massive waste of talent and potential. And I saw a need for Watson Institute in the Philippines, and this is the problem that we're trying to solve.
Can you briefly overview the Watson Institute Philippines program?
So we get 20 of the highest potential young people from around the world, the next generation of leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators. We get mentors as well to come and teach short master courses. We have intensive mentorship and personalized mentorship. We put them all into one house over the course of 2 months, and there's something amazing that happens when you put young people, young change makers together and connect them with mentors and connect them with a community. We also have transformative action, which focuses on personal and leadership development, transformative entrepreneurship, which focuses on gaining skills that you need as an entrepreneur, and then we have the Watson Lab, where scholars get to pilot, prototype, and launch their ventures.
So what do you say are the main advantages of Watson Institute Philippines over, say, traditional college?
So one thing would definitely be the community and the culture. We really value community. As a young entrepreneur, it's definitely a big risk, and it's definitely one of the scariest things I think one person has to do. It takes a village to build a venture, and we feel that when you have a community of people where you feel safe to fail, where you feel that you can be authentic, there's something amazing about that. Another one is it's also a culture that prizes innovation, that prizes helping other people solve the toughest challenges in the world. Second one would be having mentors we connect young people with mentors from around the world and people that are the best in their field.
Do you ever see Watson Institute Philippines becoming a viable alternative to traditional college?
That's definitely one of our goals. We are working on transitioning into an accredited bachelor's degree. We're working with universities in the Philippines and in the United States to create a new model of education.
I understand even if eventually you want Watson Institute Philippines to become a traditional college, some of the exercises that you guys do are really unique. Can you maybe share a few examples?
Sure. One of them is deep dives, and it goes back to having a really good community and having really good relationships. In a typical classroom setting, you have about 20 to 100 people and you realize you don't even know your classmates. Deep dive is an exercise where we give each scholar an hour to talk about their lives, and people really open up about what they've been through, their triumphs and their successes, and it's amazing because that's how we teach empathy. It's basically learning where someone is coming from, what they've been through, why they are the way they are, and why they do the things that they're doing. And I think it's really powerful when we have empathy in the community.
Can you maybe share an example of how all these different exercises contributed to the growth of one of your scholars?
Right, so another one would be Daring Greatly. So Daring Greatly is an exercise where we ask the scholars to make a list of goals and ask them to make them BHAG, so big, hairy, audacious goals. Another one would be getting as many no's as possible. And then in the getting no's game, it's addressing the problem of fear that entrepreneurs have, the fear of rejection, the fear of getting a no. So we ask them to go out into the community and get as many no's as possible, ask people the craziest possible questions. And once someone realizes that people are actually a lot more willing to say yes than they would think, it lights something up in them. It makes them realize that, okay, I don't have to fear rejection. Rejection isn't something necessarily bad, and I can always find a different way to get someone to say yes, or I can always predispose someone to want to help with my venture. I think that's something really powerful. For example, we had a scholar last year named Paolo Escuro, and Paolo is the son of a farmer and a public school teacher, and he comes from Bicol. He says that coming into Watson last year, one of his biggest challenges was feeling intimidated. Coming from Bicol, and a lot of our other scholars go to UP Diliman, he felt intimidated and he was a bit socially anxious. So when you build a community that allows people to, number one, be vulnerable, number two, be authentic, it allows them the safe space to be who they really are. And I feel like sometimes we have this culture of people having the duck syndrome, where you're too afraid to be vulnerable with other people, so you fake it till you make it. Another one is the imposter syndrome, where when you're with a group of other high achievers, it's too scary to really say that maybe I don't know what I'm actually doing. So for Paolo to be in that community and realize that, yeah, there are other young people like him too who are also just trying to figure it out, I think it was an amazing experience for him. I saw him grow and come out of his shell. Now he works with the Watson Institute team, and he's in charge of our community builder. So now he's in charge of connecting the scholars with mentors. He's now built amazing relationships with mentors. He's now launched an app called Grived on Google Play, and he's been accepted to Watson University in Boulder in the US. It's amazing what happens when you invest in one person, invest in their personal development, invest in their education, and invest in their future, because that not only affects him as a person and his life, it also affects their communities.
I understand Paolo is not an exception. The vast majority of your students are exceptionally ambitious when it comes to the problems they want to solve in the Philippines. Can you maybe share a few of the problems that they're trying to address as social entrepreneurs?
Right, so we really prize ambition in these students. We look for young students that want to solve the toughest social, environmental, and economic problems. One of them is Paul Orpiada. He comes from Naga City, and he's the founder of Caro Craft Ventures. It's a venture that empowers women in Naga City jail by teaching them how to recycle scrap materials and then turning them into arts and crafts and then selling that. So it's empowerment on an economic level, but it also gives the women from the prisons a sense of self-agency and a sense of purposeness even while they're in jail, and also a sense of dignity. The second one is Jinbert Quaton, who comes from Samar. As a victim of Typhoon Haiyan, he realized that when the typhoons happen, their whole economy gets destroyed. So he wanted to empower the women weavers. So by using tikog leaves, tikog grass, he helps them create banigs that they can sell, and also create innovative products that they can sell online.
It seems like you have a preference for students in the provinces. Why is that so?
Definitely. So a lot of what Watson is about empowering people, and it's about empowering people who come from, I suppose, the most disenfranchised places. In Manila, I feel like that we already have a huge saturation of opportunities, but for people who come from provinces, they not only go through the challenge of not having enough opportunity, it's also a challenge of mindset. I find that one of the hardest things about teaching entrepreneurship isn't actually teaching the skills, because that's something people can develop. It's changing the mindset of the people. I feel like it's not just a poverty of wealth, it's also a poverty of dreams, because when we're growing up, we're not taught that we could become CEOs. We're not taught that we can become leaders in the community. We're taught to become managers, or we're taught to become employees, and I feel like it doesn't serve everyone. I feel like we really need to empower the least of the least and provide opportunity for all.
So how are you getting these students who may come from the province to think from this perspective?
Again, through games and challenges. One of our challenges as well, apart from getting as many no's as possible, is daring greatly and getting as many yeses as possible. So this relates to positive psychology, and it's a new form of science, but it focuses on figuring out how do we best work, and then what are our greatest strengths, and then how do we multiply that? How do we focus on what we do have? It's called the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset. When you're operating in the scarcity mindset, you're thinking, what else do I don't? I can't do this because I'm not from Manila. I can't do this because I don't have a bachelor's degree. I can't do this because I don't have a particular last name. When you work from an abundance mindset, it's this is who I am. I may not have a bachelor's degree, but I'm going to go ahead and start a school. I'm going to go ahead and start this venture. You think about the resources you do have and leverage that. So that's something that we teach.
So what are your goals for your current cohort of Watson Institute Philippines students before the term ends?
So definitely we ask them to help light the candles of other people. In the beginning of Watson, we have this initiation program where we light each other's candles, and it's a very symbolic act. We remind them that they are leaders, they are change makers, and they do have the power to help light other people's candles and keep their flame alive. On a more personal level, on a more practical level, we make sure that they have an accelerated venture or idea that's ready for scale, ready for launch, or ready for investment. Number two is we want them to have deep and lasting personal growth and also leadership development skills. Three is that they have amazing relationships with the scholars in the Philippines, but also create relationships with the scholars in the States, because we have an institute also in Boulder and Philadelphia. And then number four is that they have connections to world-class mentors, world-class funders, and also partner organizations.
What is the biggest piece of advice that you usually give to your youth entrepreneurs that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think it would be live your life with purpose and passion and meaning. It's to realize that you are an incredible individual and that you have the capacity to help other people. I think sometimes with young people, especially with me, I still struggle and think, who am I to start this? Who am I to do Watson Institute? And I think just the answer to that for everyone is because you're the one that's willing to try. It takes an insane amount of courage to do this, and it takes an insane amount of grit and perseverance to go to work with our communities day in and day out, and it needs dedication. So also protect your courage and believe in yourself.
Powerful message you have to share with our audience. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that very powerful message with us today, and thank you for joining us and sharing the Watson Institute Philippines story.
Thank you for having me.
I've been speaking with Andy Rapista, the co-founder and executive director of Watson Institute Philippines. I'm Ezra Faraz, and thank you for joining Rappler Talk.